Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And the topic of this 10-minute moan has got me considering quite a worrying thing after a story I was told about a teenager in a school in the United Kingdom, and really what is the part teachers play in referring children to the Prevent organisation, who are told, or we're told, they're there to prevent people being radicalised. But a recent video I showed about an adult in Scotland who was brought to the attention of Prevent, they seem determined not to have certain people on the list of people potentially being radicalised, and seem to be targeting, as their term, far right radicalisation. So the story that was shared with me was quite haunting. And the story is about a child in a school in the United Kingdom, where the school teacher brought up, first of all, the notion of should jihadi brides who leave United Kingdom to join terror groups be allowed to come back to the United Kingdom. Now, I kind of think that breaches and goes across what we should be discussing, or allowing children to discuss in schools. I don't see what positive that has in their future. I don't see why it's important. However, if they're told about these things, that may be at one level, but the fact they are actively being asked for their opinions, and it gets worse, is a concern to me. Now, this isn't where the story ends. The story then goes on that some children in the class were asked on their opinions on what happens and what is happening in Gaza. They were asked if they felt there was genocide in Gaza. They were asked if Israel were bad in doing what they're doing. Now, the bit of the story that really concerned me is when one of the children was asked for his opinion, and he went on to speak about the terrors of the 7th of October and what happened at a music festival. There was a lot of disagreement with him. He then basically said that, I think the same as most normal people should be, that, it's somebody else's fight, but surely if someone is to commit atrocities to your country, then you have the right to defend and react. And then it went on about genocide and how this was terrible and it's the worst thing in the world. This is not a debating chamber for kids of this age. This is a kid that's recently became a teenager. This isn't somebody 18 or 19 years of age. And then something peculiar happened that I'm not going to go into, for the simple fact it could help, pigeonhole the child. Somebody could work out who I'm talking about. I have no intentions of causing anybody any harm over this video, particularly those affected by it. But something strange happened at the school a few days later, when this good, normally outstanding child in school was given disciplinary action for something that didn't happen and wasn't witnessed by teachers. And that concerned me. Then, while I was discussing this with the child's parent, I suddenly remembered a video I'd done a week or two ago about Prevent. And something in the back of my mind was annoying me, because I was sure while I was looking for information in that video that there was something telling me that teachers were asked, and indeed it is their duty, to inform Prevent of any children they fear not being radicalised, but have the fear of being radicalised, the possibility of being radicalised. And then I decided to look further. And what I find is very, very worrying. Not because stopping people being radicalised is a bad thing, it's a good thing. But the people who are making the decisions and judging who is and hasn't been radicalised, and we've already got a government inquiry that shows that the Prevent organisation were not very good at identifying radical extremists. Their figures for the amount of people who are radical extremists and the ratio of how they were being radicalised, whether that's far right, Islamic, whatever, all these different ways you can be radicalised, were not in line with any other findings with any other organisation, most notably our intelligence services, who had about 80 to 90% of people on watch lists were for Islamic radicalisation. Their figures in Prevent were the complete opposite. They were telling everybody, and determined to prove, by the way, that the majority of the problem in the United Kingdom was the risk of far-right radicalisation. Then you consider the topics that teachers are having, not teaching kids, not telling them, but actually drawing conversations out of kids in their classrooms, which I feel are really unneeded in the first place, and potentially what can happen after that. So let me just share with you what actually Prevent's saying, what the government actually are telling our teachers. So as you'll see here, this is from the government's own website, and the Prevent duty, right? This is your duty as a teacher. An introduction for those with safeguarding responsibilities. The Prevent duty requires all education providers to help prevent the risk of people becoming terrorists or supporting terrorism. This includes safeguarding learners from extremist ideologies and radicalisation. Most importantly, providers should consider the needs of children, young people, and adult learners at each stage of the safeguarding process. Providers should consider radicalisation concerns in line with their existing safeguarding processes, skills, and experience. So then it goes on, managing radicalisation and extremism, safeguarding concerns. And this bit here, to comply with Prevent duty, schools, colleges, and further education independent providers must show evidence of productive cooperation, in particular with local Prevent staff. Local Prevent staff, who our government's inquiry tell us are not doing the job very well and are not looking for proper radicalisation. They seem more determined to paint a picture that the biggest threat to the United Kingdom right now is far-right extremism. So your duty as a teacher is to have productive cooperation with Prevent. Can you see where I have my fears? And have coordination, through existing multi-agency forums. Each local authority, and this is a bit I would like some help with, has its own referral routes for safeguarding learners from radicalisation and extremism. Effective partnerships will ensure that you understand the process. So immediate steps to be taken. Find out if Prevent referral process. Find the referral process in your local authority. So if you're a school teacher, it's your duty to know this process. Contact and build partnerships with your local Prevent lead, local authority Prevent education officer. It just goes nuts. It goes absolutely nuts. So make sure you understand what radicalisation means and why learners may be susceptible to being drawn into terrorism. So the teachers have to understand what Prevent thinks is radicalisation. They have to look out for it in their schools, and they have to report as and when required. And this, to be perfectly frank with you, frightens the life out of me. Because I think it's kind of, and I don't want to generalise every school teacher, but I've spoken to a few school teachers about some things, especially in Scotland, where we had problems with sex education and the things that were being promoted at schools. Now, although some teachers were uncomfortable with the things that we were discussing with our school children and primary school kids at that, and we had legislation and recommendations on how we spoke to preschool kids about sex education, potty, right? Some of the teachers up here were very protective of it and felt it was okay. Now, yes, there were some who were like, this is evidently wrong. I would suggest they were in the minority. And if you're the type of person that thinks children should be, taught about masturbation, pornography, etc., at preschool ages and primary school ages, then I think it's not a massive leap needed to consider that these people would be ones on the left, far left of politics, who would disagree with a child saying that Israel were allowed and should be allowed to defend themselves. These opinions would be alien to a lot of school teachers. These are the very school teachers, I must remind you, have a duty by our government to refer anybody they think have been radicalised, or even the risk of radicalisation is enough for children to be referred on to the Prevent programme. Now, here's the bit I want help with. As it's been driven from government into local government, I need help. And I want as many people as possible around the UK to write to the local councils and ask for a freedom of information. There's good reason why I cannot do that. And I will cover that when I am legally allowed to cover that. I simply can't do it for reasons I'm not going to get into just now. However, you can. And what I would like people to do is write an FOI request, which you can do online, to your local council and ask them how many kids over the last, this legislation, let me just get the time of it actually. I think it was from 2017. But you might want to ask for over the last 5 years, right? And ask them how many children in their area have been referred to the Prevent programmes and possibly why. So this has freaked me a bit. I need to be honest with you. This is a really odd conversation that's been had in a secondary school in the United Kingdom, and the consequences of this and what could potentially happen. And I'm not suggesting it's happening in this. I don't know enough about this one case. However, knowing how Prevent work, knowing how the mind of some teachers work, and there's some fantastic teachers out there, by the way. This isn't have a pop at teachers. This is having a concern for our children who may be having discussions in their schools with teachers who might disagree with them politically. Imagine disagreeing with a child politically, but that's where we are. And that could see our children being referred to Prevent to help stop radicalisation that kind of isn't happening anyway. So if you want others to see this video, please hit the thumbs up, put your comments below and hit the share button. If you've not already done so, please consider subscribing to the channel. However, the most important thing of all, unless you're the type of person that wants to discuss things in our schools that are ridiculous to be talking about with school children, you have to be aware of the things that go on in the world. But we don't need to have debates and actually insist that children explain their opinions on things that have got nothing to do with us. And not you, but anyone else and everyone else. Have a great day. Cheery bye now.